Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm sharing a powerful story that proves help can come from the most unexpected place. And sometimes the quietest person in the room holds the biggest solution. The rain had been falling since morning, turning the city streets into shining mirrors of light and movement. Inside a luxury hotel overlooking the skyline, everything was calm, controlled, and expensive. Marble floors, crystal lights, and people in sharp suits moved with purpose. On the top floor, behind tall glass windows, sat a man who was used to having control over everything. His name was Alexander Cole, a self-made billionaire, a man who had closed deals worth millions with a single handshake. Today, however, his hands were shaking. Alexander checked his watch again. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, the most important deal of his career was about to begin. An international partnership that would expand his company across 3 continents. The investors had flown in from overseas. The contracts were printed, the room was prepared, but one thing was missing. His translator. Alexander pulled out his phone for the 10th time, calling the number again. No answer. His assistant stood near the door, pale and nervous. "Sir," the assistant said carefully, "we've tried every contact. There's been an accident on the highway. Flight's delayed. You won't make it." Alexander felt his chest tighten. The investors spoke little English. Alexander spoke none of their language. Without a translator, there would be confusion, misunderstandings, and possibly the collapse of a deal worth millions. "Delay the meeting," Alexander snapped. "We can't," the assistant replied. "They're already here. This is their last day in the country." Alexander leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. He had faced competition, lawsuits, and failures before. But never this. Never being completely powerless. Downstairs, in the hotel cafe, a young waitress named Emma moved between tables with a tray in her hands. She was in her early 20s, wearing a simple uniform, her hair tied back neatly. She had been working double shifts to help support her family. To most people, she was invisible, just another waitress serving coffee. As Emma placed a cup on a table, she overheard 2 men speaking in a foreign language. She paused for just a second. Her eyes widened slightly. She understood them. The men were talking about a meeting upstairs, about a businessman who seemed unprepared, about concerns that the deal might fall apart. Emma felt a strange pull in her chest. She had grown up speaking that language at home. Her mother was from overseas, and Emma had learned both languages fluently. She rarely used it now. There was never a reason. Until now. Upstairs, Alexander stood as the investors entered the meeting room. Polite smiles were exchanged. Hands were shaken. Then came the silence. Long, uncomfortable silence. One of the investors began speaking, slowly and formally. Alexander listened, trying to read expressions, gestures, tone. He nodded uncertainly. He responded in English, choosing his words carefully, hoping his meaning would be understood. "WASN. Single quotes T." Confusion spread across the investors' faces. Whispers followed. One of them frowned, closing the folder in front of him. Alexander felt sweat forming at his collar. This was going wrong. Fast. Outside the meeting room, Emma stood holding a tray, her heart pounding. She had followed them upstairs under the excuse of delivering refreshments. She wasn't sure what she was about to do, but she knew one thing. She couldn't stay silent. She took a deep breath and gently knocked on the door. The assistant opened it slightly, annoyed. "This is a private meeting." Emma swallowed. "I'm sorry, but I think I can help." Alexander looked up sharply. "Help with what?" Emma glanced at the investors, then back at Alexander. "I speak their language fluently." The room froze. Alexander stared at her, disbelief clear on his face. "A waitress. Here now." One of the investors spoke again, curious. Emma turned and responded smoothly, respectfully, translating his words into perfect English. Alexander's eyes widened. She translated his reply back just as clearly. The tension in the room shifted. Alexander stood up slowly. Can you really do this?" Emma nodded, her hands shaking slightly. "Yes, sir, if you'll allow me." There was a brief pause. Then Alexander gestured to a chair. "Please." Emma set the tray down and took a seat near the end of the table. The meeting resumed, sentence by sentence. Emma bridged the gap between worlds. She translated technical terms, business strategies, and even emotional nuances. She didn't just translate words. She translated intent. Alexander watched in amazement. Moments earlier, everything had been slipping through his fingers. Now, the conversation flowed. The investors relaxed. They smiled. They laughed at the right moments. Hours passed by. The end of the meeting, contracts were signed. Hands were shaken again, this time with confidence and satisfaction. The deal was saved as the investors left. One of them bowed slightly to Emma and said something softly. Emma translated, smiling. He said your vision is impressive, and he's glad we could understand each other. Alexander exhaled deeply, like a man coming back to life. Once the room was empty, Alexander turned to Emma. What's your name? Emma, she replied. Emma, he repeated. You just saved $1 million deal. Emma shrugged shyly. It just helped. Alexander shook his head. No, you did far more than that. He asked her about her background, about how she learned the language, about her goals. Emma hesitated. I wanted to work in international relations one day, but life got in the way. Bale's responsibilities. So I work here. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. Life has a funny way of showing us where we belong, he said. A week later, Emma received a phone call that changed everything. Alexander offered her a full-time position at his company as a junior international liaison. Training included. Salary more than she had ever imagined. Emma cried when she hung up. Months passed. Emma grew into her role, gaining confidence and respect. She traveled, learned, and built the future she once thought was impossible. As for Alexander, he never forgot that day. Never forgot how panic had nearly cost him everything, and how help had arrived wearing a simple uniform and carrying a tray. From then on, he made one rule in his company: never underestimate anyone. Because sometimes, the person who saves the day isn't the one sitting at the head of the table, it's the one quietly listening nearby, waiting for the right moment to speak. And that's today's story. If this story reminded you that talent can come from anywhere and kindness can change lives, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.